is you definitely want to get the WordPress down. And how, when I say get the WordPress down, it basically means you want to be able to create these pages. So you want to create these pages, and these pages would be called digital animation, storyboards, motion graphic, character designs, and videos and case studies. These videos, which are the 12 principles by Becker, are brilliant. Every industry, every animator, knows this, these videos. And this will become what we call our blog posting. And what do I mean by a blog posting? So when you're in WordPress, you have pages and posts. So pages are actually what we call in web design your menu. These are pages. This homepage, which is my homepage, is what we call a blog. And you will be creating 12 blogs for the entire 15 weeks, so it's only 12. And what you're going to do is you're going to create a blog to talk about an animation, could be motion graphic, could be a visual effect, and you will be talking about what principle of animation that you see in the animation that you're posting. So in other words, for instance, if we go to the site, even in motion graphic, there actually is some principles that they use in motion graphic. And so you will identify some principles in the animations that you see. And that will help you have a really good eye about making very good animations. So that's just one aspect of why we have a portfolio. So you want to create that WordPress. Pages is all you have to worry about right now. We'll talk about the blog posts again. And then you want to be able to create some actual geometric shapes in Animate. And that's why I'm going to do the tutorial now, so that you can walk through with the tutorial, stop it and start it, and follow the steps to create some rough geometric shapes. Eventually, next week, we will do a storyboard. That will be the storyboard assignment. We'll be doing a motion graphic storyboard assignment. So we'll talk about that next week. So let's go to Animate. You launch Animate. And, if there's a tutorial that they will give you, definitely watch it through. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new one, which is what you will be doing. And in creating a new one, you will get this pop-up window. And if you notice, Flash will give you all kinds of formats now. Do you want to create a character animation, a game, or an education? The important thing for us is we're going to do HD, this 1280 by 720. This very first one under the character animation. And by default, just leave it. And Action Scripting 3 is absolutely what you want. And they have that now set up as a standard. So we would do create. Now, when you get to larger sizes, your memory will consume a lot of memory from your computer. So if you don't have a lot of RAM, like only 8 gigabytes of RAM, I would stay within this 1280 by 720 parameter, because then it won't take all the memory and crash and things like that. So you really want to be able to understand that this is HD quality, and it works really well. And it's actually the quality I have for the YouTube videos. So it does work well, full screen, as well as thumbnail, as watching it in YouTube. So right away, we are right now in Flash. And I'm just going to move this over a little bit more so we can have some real estate. And you notice how I can move the stage around? That's because I have a space bar. The space bar gives you a hand that lets you move things around. So I'm doing that so that you can begin to see some of the windows that you need to have. So when you're in Flash, the most important windows that you must have are the tools, the library, and the property box. You can't work in Flash unless you have access to those windows at all times. And you can find those windows way up here under Windows. Can you see Windows, guys? Can you see Windows? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Otherwise, I would minimize it to be smaller, but then I think that might get smaller. Let me see, is this a little better?
No, it was better.
The other way? Okay, good. We'll go back to that way.
I have a larger screen at home, but I'm not going home till October or so.
Okay, so this works like this, looks like this will work for us. So now, by default, you should have all the tools there. But if you want more tools, you can find them here, and we'll talk about that. But by default, they give you all the tools, which is great. And it's important to know to really be sure that all your windows are open. You don't want to have closed windows. You want to be sure that everything is open that you can be able to see. And so on here, as soon as you start something, you want to save it right away. So you would go File, Save As, and I'm going to save it where I have things, which is right up here. And so I'm going to save it under this. And so you want to call it, and I would like you to create a file naming system. We're going to call it motion_01. And that's a file naming protocol that I use for everything I do on a computer. Every time I work on the document, it's a higher number. So then the next time I work on it, it's 02. Next time, 03. So I know that the highest number is my last edit. And then I have a backup if something happens, like a corruption or whatever it could be. So I'm going to save that. So you want to save immediately so that when you're working, and I do mean this, every 30 seconds you should be saving your work. I don't know about you, but I do not like to lose a blessed thing. So to me, every 30 seconds, my left hand, I'm righty, so my left hand is always on the Control S or Command S, whichever platform you're on, PC or Mac. And then vice versa, you can do that as well. But it's really important to know that you should be saving every 30 seconds. And that's why you learn those keyboard shortcuts. So you can quickly, before I even, when I'm working and my family starts talking to me, I do Control S and go, yeah, right? So, but you know that when you walk away from your computer, your work is saved. And this becomes important because in animation, you can get a lot done in 30 seconds, if not 10 minutes. So you don't want to lose that value work. There are undos. Flash does have undos, but sometimes when you're in certain windows, it doesn't always do the undo. So saving is very important. So the things that I want you to do in this is to understand the aspect about why we have libraries and why we have layers. So here down here is your timeline. So these are 30 frames per second, and these are your layers. So like as in Photoshop and so forth, you have layers, but in Flash, you have a library and you have layers, and the library is what we call our symbols. So you'll hear me say, is it a symbol? Is it a symbol? So let me just show you, here's a toolbar, and the toolbar is very intuitive, which is why Adobe has dominated the industry. It is a really smart software. So I'm just gonna make a couple of geometric shapes. So I'm gonna use the square tool, the rectangle tool. I'm gonna go to the property box. So now you see my color matches here, and it also matches over there. So the property box gives you what your pictorial elements are. So I can make a square. Now, if I make a rectangle, I can do that without the shift key. But if I wanted it to be a perfect square, you would put the shift key down, mouse down, and now you have a perfect square. So that's the same thing as if you wanted a circle. You could get an elliptical like this, or you can do shift key and get a perfect circle. So the shift key always gives you proportionately control of your shapes for squares and circles. And so now I want to highlight this. So there's two ways to highlight an element in Flash. Use your arrows, and these two are what were in Illustrator. The black arrow is a selection tool, and the white arrow is for editing points, and I will show you what that means. So when you highlight an element in Flash, you don't really just select it like that. You want to select the whole object like that, using the black arrow. And the reason why you want to do that is because you can change the stroke. Now my stroke color is white, so let's get that changed. And I just changed it to red here, but you can also change it here. And so now, see, if I just select this, I've selected just the blue. So that's why when you select all of it, you get to be moving the whole object. Now, right now, if I go back to my library, this object is in what we call up here in the left corner a scene. This is your movie. This is what's going to render out as a video, this scene. You can have multiple scenes in Flash. Right now we're working with only one. But the library, every pictorial element that you create must be converted to be a symbol, and it must exist in your library. Every pictorial element. So even though I've created it here, I've got to get it into the library. And this is how you do that. So you can draw and you can paint and you can create things just like I am in a scene. And when you're done, you need to bring them into the library to make them a symbol. And there's lots of reason for that, and I'll explain in a second. So one right now, so I'm going to highlight the object. Then I come up here to modify, and I convert to symbol. So converting to symbol, you're going to go circle, and you want to be sure it's a graphic. I'll explain the others when we get further down the line, but you want it to be a circle, and you might want to call it blue because you might have other circles. So file naming is a big deal in animation. You can't just do random files or file names. It must be very, very specific. Otherwise, it's like, where is it? Can't find it. Where is it? And you waste a lot of time not getting and jumping right to where things are. So you say, okay. Now you can see that that object is in my library. Now, this is where beginners get really mixed up. So that's why I'm taking our time to walk through this, and you'll have this as a video. There's two worlds in Flash. There is the scene, and then there are symbols that are in the library. You often work in both of them. But what's often confusing is you will say to yourself, where am I? Am I in a scene, or am I in a library symbol? So what I want you to do is just watch the dashboard, the interface. So right now you can see scene up here, right? If I come over here to the library and I double click, watch what happens up here in the upper left-hand corner. So I'm going to take my circle blue, I'm going to double click it, And now you see what? I'm in another window, not seen, but circle blue, right? Now I'll come back out of it. Watch what happens when I come back out of it with this arrow. Click. Now I'm back in my movie, my scene. Anne's shaking her head. Oh my gosh, what is this? Welcome to animation. So
That's so tiny on my screen.
That's tough. That's tough. But when you see the video, it will be full screen and you'll be able to see it on there. So the point to be made here is that you can create other layers. Let's do another layer. So I'm going to turn this layer off so we don't see it anymore. You know, an eyeball is seeing it. Now you see it. Now you don't. And now I'm highlighted on here and I'm going to create a square. And I want that square to be red. And I'll click this and make the outline be green. And shift key down. And now I've got a square. And again, if you wanted to change the color, you could go to property box, change it to a light orange maybe. And so now I have another geometric shape, but I must get it into the library. So you can highlight it like so, come back here to modify, convert to symbol. And of course, this is a square and it is orange. And leaving it at graphic. Now, watch what happens. I'm going to turn this on now. So now I have, right, my other layer. Now I've got two objects. And what if I want to bring the circle to be forward? You mouse down on the layer and just push it up. And now it's in the foreground. And vice versa. Bring the orange back and so forth. So that's how you can move your layers to be in the foreground. You also have a way, if you have 100 layers, there's also a way that says arrange, bring to the front, send to the back, right? If you've got a lot of layers. So, but now watch what happens when I double click the scene, not double clicking the library up here, but double clicking within the scene. So I'm going to double click. So now you see I am in scene and I'm really in the orange square. How do I know that? Because it says it right up here. Why is that important? So that if you're designing something in conjunction, so if you're doing a portrait, if you're drawing someone's face, and you've already done the hair, you might want to see the face with the hair, right? Two separate things. And the question would be, well, why would I want two separate things? Because those two separate things called hair and face are going to animate separately. And therefore they have to be in a separate symbol. So often you can combine things, but that is why everything is built in a symbol, which is in your library, and then you drag and drop them into your scene. So for instance, right now, you notice the timeline looks exactly like the scene. So that's why you're often looking, going, am I in the scene or am I in the library? And the way you can tell that is just simply looking up to the left-hand corner and knowing that I'm jumping back to the scene now. So if I double-click the orange, now I'm only in the symbol. And you kind of notice it too because it gets all white, right? The whole edge. You don't see the boundaries of the video, your animation. And so watch what happens when I am editing in the actual symbol. So I'm going to use the white arrow now to show you what that does. And that is the points. So I can use the points like so. And this is the drawing tool. So everyone who loves to draw loves Flash, Animate, and they love Illustrator. And this is a tool that they love that I'm going to show you now. And that tool is what we call the pen tool. Maria knows all about this pen tool. So when I come down here to this convert tool, I can mouse down on this point, and now I have what we call the Bezier curve, or Bezier, Bezier. I may not have the right pronunciation, but you see I am converting this into a curve. So you know how photographers often say, oh, I'll fix it in Photoshop, right? You fix your, I'm gonna go to the white arrow now, and I can move, I wanna change this. Whoop, don't want that, Control Z. I just want my white arrow. These are what we call handles. So you can move this to be what you want it to be. And that's what we call drawers. When they do a rough thumbnail, they'll go, I'll fix it in Illustrator. I'll fix it in Flash because of these tools. So you can create these shapes. Now watch what happens. I'll even change the color. Go back to my black arrow. So the difference between remember the difference between these two arrows, the white arrow edits points. The black arrow selects the whole object, or some of it, like the inner part right now, and I can go to my property box and I can change it to a different color. Now watch what happens when I jump back to the scene. Remember, we're in the symbol library. What just happened?
It's not square anymore.
Exactly. So now you can see that the library editing tool of the symbol will change that object in the movie because they are linked. They are linked. And that is an incredible important tool in animation.
So
Perfect.
Professor,
Yes.
sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
But
Maria.
what happens if I want the two shapes, the square one and also the one that you just made?
Good question, Maria. Thank you for asking that. So what I would do is I would have gone back, and let's see how good the undos are, right? Ah, there's my undo, right? Happy that you asked that, Maria. But remember always, right click, duplicate.
Okay.
Right? That is what you would do. So now I will call this the green blob. Because I still have the orange square. So now when I double click this one, I'm going to check to be sure it says green blob up here. I still have my square orange. And now let's go a little further because Maria asked a really important question. Let's go back to that again. Let's use that Bezier curve again. It's under the pen tool. Look how you can add points and delete points. And then the convert tool will make it round. That round. And if you want to make it straight, it will convert it back to be straight. So now watch what happens when I go back to my scene. I still have my, oh, I forgot to make it a green blob. Let's do that. Sorry, let's go back to the black arrow to select the color, go back to property box, change it to the green blob. back to the scene. My blob, my green blob has not been brought to the scene yet. So I'm gonna make a new layer down here. I'm gonna make that come in the foreground.
Did you save it or something?
Good question, let's save it. Control S, thank you. Go back to the library. All we have to do is up on this window, you have your layer highlighted, that's critical. You must have your layer highlighted. And then you mouse down and drag and drop. And now I have my green blob here, and I can put it in the back if I want. And now I'm beginning to create objects for the Animotion graphics. Now, the objects that you're going to be creating, you just want to have fun with it. You want to make a lot of mistakes. You want to figure out this library, this symbol, these editing tools. But there are also very hand-drawn tools. There's the pen tool, the brush tool. So really begin to just doodle and paint and all that sort. But basically what we want to do is get into creating shapes. Now, shapes can also be type. So if I wanted to create type, you can actually go right to a symbol right away. So right now.
Now, would you save all of these symbols on our blog too? Like
no, you keep everything in Flash, Animate.
Because you said everything has to be saved on the online, on a drive, and on our computer.
That's right. So the only time.
Should I put all the shapes into the blog?
No, you don't need to at this point. You just keep it in your Flash document. You want to keep it in the Animate document. When I would like you to put things to the blog is where you can go, like for instance, you're going to be working in Animate, you're going to create your own file, and you're going to save your own file on your own computer. And eventually you're going to be putting some of the elements from the animation to the blog. For instance, you might do some thumbnail sketches of your geometric designs. But you can also come over here to File, Export an image. And that will export wherever you are on the timeline. So wherever you are in your animation, Flash will export that frame. So right now, I'm not concerned for it to be up on the blog, and we're just sort of really cracking software. So that is just something that I can see when you share your screen on other times that we get together. I can share your screen and look at your documents. Because
now,
all of you
Animate have to have Wi-Fi? Animate have to have Wi-Fi to work, or will it work locally on my computer?
It's an application program. It works locally. Yep. So, so that's really what I'm looking for you to do, is to be able to create these geometric shapes. And I'm just going to go to show you why the property box is so important. So watch what happens. You notice there's a blue outline on objects that are symbols, things that are in the library. And that is because you can be able to create an animation from it. So on the property box, watch what happens up here. You see it says an instance. It's really tiny. It says instance circle blue. When I click the orange, square orange. When I click the blob, square blob. And this is where you can be able to swap to different objects in the library. So say I want to have 2 oranges. I don't want this red. The client doesn't want this blue circle, right? They want another box. They want another orange box here. I can come over here to my object, and if I roll over here, it will say swap symbol. So I'll swap it, and it will give me all of my symbols, and I can say, I don't want the blue circle anymore. I want the square orange. And it swaps to square orange. Now, why would that be important? Well, trust me, you do an animation and the animation is done, and the animation was an animating a maple leaf, and the client goes, you know, we don't want maple leaves. I think we want an oak leaf. What? That's a whole other design. Well, you can go back and change that maple leaf into an oak, swap the design, and the animation will stay intact. And now you've got an oak leaf animating where before it was animating a maple leaf. So that swapping it becomes a really beautiful tool that you love. And you don't have to recreate the wheel. You've already done the animation for the leaf. The only thing that changed was the design. And so that's why they built the swap, so that if you built an animation and the design is only changing, you just swap it out. So those are some of the tutorials that we will do. I'm going to undo this to go back. And as you can see, undo does work. And they have improved it when you jump back and forth between the symbol and the library. Any other good questions that Maria and Anne had spoken about? Any other things that you were like, well, what about this or what about that? All good? So what I'm going to do, I did save it. And so that's what you want to accomplish this week. You want to accomplish making geometric shapes. Let's do the type tool. We have some time here. So I'm going to make another layer. I'm going to turn all of these off. I'm on this layer. I'm going to use a type tool. And I'm just going to make a box. And you see on the property box, here's my property box, 12 points is pretty small. So I'm going to change this to 200. And I'm going to type motion. And you can control all and select your typeface. Up here, Roman. And I'm a big sans serif when it comes to type in animation. So I'll use an Arial. And I probably will do a bold. So it's nice and big. And then you can bring this out. And so now you have a type. And whenever you have type in a motion graphic or in animation or in time base, this is what we call a graphic that is editable. You can change it. So if I go back to my library, it's not there yet. So I have to convert, again, highlight the object, modify, convert to symbol, and I will call it motion because that's what it is. Now it's in my library. And I would, again, like Maria asked, what if they change the typeface, right? So I'm going to go duplicate, make it a copy, so it will sit right next to it. And in motion, I'm going to double click it. And at this point, I'm going to break it apart. Right here, break it apart. Now they're separate entities. So I can move them to different locations. And then I can begin to animate them. Now, if these were all animating, doing different things, each one would become a symbol. And I would have symbol M, symbol O, symbol T, symbol I, and symbol N. I would not have to create two O's because I can repeat it using the same O. And so if we go back to scene, there we are with our scene. And there we are with our other objects. And so you notice it is all together here. And you can also change the background of the stage, which is under Modify, Document, And sometimes when you are doing designs that have white in it, you really need to turn the gray background so you can see it. And so like on this one now, I'm going to go back to the motion here. And you can double click the name, and I'm going to call it motion split because I kind of did that with the word. And I can select all. Oops, not that all, but select in here. And I can, let's see if the property box will let me change the colors. Yes, it does. And then I can go back to my scene. And now I have something like this. But again, if I wanted those letters to assemble, to come back together, to read motion, every letter would be a separate symbol. So that's the general rule, is if you were animating a clock and the face of the clock with the numbers does not animate, that can be one symbol. But the arm and the hands would be two symbols, right? Big arrow, small arrow, and because they are rotating. But the face of the clock is not animating. If I wanted to animate the face of the clock, then those numbers would have to be separate. So that's the general rule. If you want things to be animated, they must be a separate symbol, a separate entity to be able to control the animation.